Is nou geskakel op 'n GROOTplaas. Ons gas saam met ons vanoggend Dr. Nkabeng Mzileni en ons gesels met haar. Sy is die Hoofbestuurder van Wetenskaplike Dienste by die Kaapse Navorsingsentrum oor 'n onlangse luiperd wat hulle daar gewaar het. Dr. Good morning and welcome to GROOTplaas.
Good morning, Dopey. How are you this morning?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. So, a recent photograph captured of a leopard at the Weskus Nasionale Park for the first time in 170 years. Why is this such a big deal for conservation in South Africa?
No, this is definitely a win, and that's a fantastic milestone that we've actually reached, considering that it's been close to 2 centuries that we've actually been able to identify the species back in the landscape. But we consider this a conservation win because historically the species had been wiped out from the area due to a variety of reasons, be it conflict with farming practices, habitat fragmentation, and just not conducive for the species to be in the area. So now that changes have been evolving over time, and these are long processes that have been taking place, it is fantastic to see that the species is naturally colonizing back into the area.
So when you say they're naturally recolonizing the area, do we know where these animals have come from? Have they migrated from a different area and they are now taking shelter over there?
Yes, so essentially with a species, what it's going to look for is where it can find refuge, some forage, water, dispersal opportunities, and mating opportunities. So over time, we've been creating corridors, which are landscape stewardship programs where landowners are more open to natural practices in the area. So we've transformed the land back from what was previously farmed or agriculture to more ecologically friendly uses of the landscape, or at least socially ecologically friendly. So these corridors have then allowed for connectivity between natural spaces. And for example, Weskus Nasionale Park has been established. It's been around for almost 40 years now, and it's been expanding. So it's allowed these natural areas to become connected through these corridors, allowing for these species to find these resources that they need along the way, which has now allowed them to actually come back into the system on their own.
So naturally leopards are quite shy animals, and you'll only see them mostly in the evenings. But what factors contributed to the leopard's return of over more than a century, except those that you've mentioned? Was there a better situation, or habitat-wise, was this a good fit for the leopard?
Yes, no, excellent, because it's actually several factors which are quite important. So we've mentioned the ecological factors of restoring habitats, so minimizing the fragmentation, which means with some of the fences being removed, changing the actual land uses from intensive agriculture to more friendly ecological practices. And also there have been the social changes as well. So the relationship that people have with predators, for example, by working with different organizations and with different outreach programs, there's been better education about different husbandry processes, different crawling, for example, just how better to manage livestock in the landscape to minimize conflict. And if interactions do occur, what are the best ways or channels of communication to minimize impact to the landowner that's being impacted or the community that's being impacted? And then there's also the technology development, because as you mentioned, leopards are cryptic, they're very shy creatures. And now we have technology such as camera traps, where we don't have to be there in person to cause a disturbance, but rather we can set up these camera traps, and they, in isolation, without being detected by the animals, can actually capture this information for us, which is fantastic, because this is how we ended up in this situation of having this conversation today.
So how does work between initiatives like Landmark Leopard and Predator Project, local communities, private landowners and institutions like sandparks show the importance of partnership in wildlife conservation?
Oh, partnership is very important. And it spans across the organizations that you've mentioned already, various NGOs, including the Cape Leopard Trust, definitely with the landowners as well, and communities, because with leopards, they require vast home ranges, large areas in order to move into. Now, because we because we're separated into different mosaics of land uses and different ownerships and different uses, as mentioned, we need to be able to have partnerships and work together, because the way that we monitor leopards needs to be systematic across the landscape and in the different property areas. So we need these relationships to work together so that we can be consistent and communicate with each other to be able to restore these habitats and to be able to get this information across. So it is quite important that we continue to maintain and establish these relationships with the different partnerships.
So from Weskus National Park side, what are you guys planning for the future in terms of helping the leopards recolonize that specific area?
Fortunately, with the Weskus National Park, there are still plans for the area to continue to expand, and we continue to have discussions with landowners who are bordering in our buffer areas and just bordering the park to be able to be conducive to our ecological practices. So to be open to not exterminating predators if they come across them, to communicating with us in the event that they do come across them, and just to make sure that we maintain that relationship. So from West Coast side, or from Sandpark side, we're going to continue to maintain and build our relationships while continuing to ensure that the landscape is supportive for the leopard to return in full force.
So when it comes to something like this, a lot of people might not be that happy to know that we've got leopard back in our area, but there are possible benefits, obviously, to having a predator of that kind back in the region. How might this impact other species, including those relevant to agriculture?
That's a great question, because it's very true. As much as this is an ecological win, there are some concerns still which we can't deny the reality of. From an ecological perspective, this means that the smaller antelope, some of the small mammals, their populations can start to potentially be controlled a little bit more naturally, which means that the use of different controls, such as poisonings, etc., can be minimized, because now there's a natural predator in the area that can control that. And because of those smaller antelopes and small mammals being controlled, that also means that the vegetation also has a chance to just be restored to what's a normal balance. In the absence of some of these apex predators, what tends to happen is that the distribution, the populations, and the behaviors of some of these mammals can get out of control and disrupt what should be the natural vegetation aspect. Now, the concerns then from a livestock perspective just means that we now need to discuss in a little bit more detail and more specific to landowners, what are some of the husbandry and crawling opportunities that they can investigate that are appropriate for their scale and for whatever livestock it is that they're working with. So from an agricultural perspective, it's a win, because the leopard will start to manage some of those smaller herbivores that might be disruptive. And then from a livestock perspective, we just need to engage more about how to continue to ensure that we're overseeing the minimizing of that human-wildlife conflict aspect.
So you've mentioned education, and from the other answers that you've been giving, education is going to play a big part of rehabilitating leopard into this region. But how can landowners, farmers and rural communities contribute to wildlife conservation and coexistence, for example, balancing agricultural and livestock farming with predator presence?
That's a great question, because one of the hardest things to change is to change our minds. So it takes a repeated exposure to these discussions and to understanding what the role leopards play or predators play in the landscape. It takes time for us to have discussions so we can change our minds about appreciation of, if I conduct my behaviors this way, protecting my livestock from actually becoming a prey option. Or if I come across a leopard, this is how I need to react in this situation. This is how I need to protect my livestock. So continuous outreach and educational programs and access to information. There are several websites, there are WhatsApp groups, there are community-specific platforms and forums as well. All of these areas, the NGOs and the different partners that we mentioned now are active in those different platforms and are able to provide information to the different communities, landowners, livestock farmers, agricultural farmers, so that they can continue to slowly but surely work towards those social changes.
Well, Doctor, thank you so much for chatting to us this morning. I really appreciate your time, and we look forward to seeing the recolonization of the leopard in that specific region. Please keep us updated as far as you can. Dis Dr. Nkabeng Mzileni en sy is die Hoofbestuurder van Wetenskaplike Dienste by die Kaapse Navorsingsentrum. Dit is dit vir GROOTplaas vir vanoggend. Ons hoop jy het lekker saam met ons gekuier. Ons weet jy sien uit na die naweek wat voorlê en ons speel dan vir jou uit met ietsie om net jou 'n bietjie in die naweek by te kry. Dis WGNL met Bosveld Dans. Sien mekaar weer maandag.